I know what's going on. I didn't at all, and I think it shows.
Disney Star Wars The Acolyte is a disjointed coagulation of scenes with inane dialogue and vaguely Star Wars-flavored features. It includes problematic morals and subject matter that makes it unsuitable for children and minors, while also being intellectually insulting to the least discerning adult. Disney Lucasfilm has strayed so far from the winning formula with this installment that I fear they may have succeeded in convincing old and new fans alike to declare Star Wars is dead. And honestly, good riddance. I hope they take all their money with them. Are you still here? Great. Because I'm about to break this down like a cardboard box behind Walmart. If you're new here, I'm KM Carter. I've been a creative writer for over 30 years. I have a bachelor's in writing. Basically, I have a BA in BS. Anyway, there's links to all of my work that you can read for free below, but you didn't come here for that. You came for the evisceration. Let's get started, shall we?
I know what's going on.
Okay, so the breakdown. Really, the only breakdown that I care about here is the existential breakdown that all of these creators are having online. Even really, really cynical creators at the end of their videos are just crestfallen. I can't believe I've watched something like this get so bad to where I not only hate the show, but also it's really super poorly made and it's really expensive. And I'm just so sad. It's like watching the Big Bird costume like going up in flames and your adult self is like, well, I mean, they can make another one and it's just a costume, but there's a part of like your inner child is like screaming in agony. What's Big Bird? You know what? My point exactly. I'm dead inside. I mean, these creators are just full of profound sadness and grief even. Like they're grieving his loss. This is a serious thing. It's not something that Hollywood should take lightly. I don't necessarily want to get into it, but this is a form of cultural vandalism. It's gaslighting. It's saying to fans that everything that you thought you understood about something that was really integral to your psyche, all of a sudden you actually never understood it. And me, someone who is not a hardcore fan and did not grow up with it the way you grew up with it, I'm going to reinterpret it and I'm going to tell you what your whole childhood meant. Like it's that level of gaslighting and trying to call it out, but it's just not working because money in pockets. Now, so many wonderful reviewers have done super uber breakdowns of every single detail of every single show. So I am not going to rehash all of that, but in order to set the stage, I am going to have to do some sort of a summary. So the summary I'm going to do of the entire episode arc of this whole season, I hope to God it is the only season. I'm going to summarize the plot in a linear, comprehensive manner. This is also for young viewers, normies, and honestly, for my own sanity, I'm going to include a few more details about the plot.
I know what's going on.
Approximately 100 years before Darth Vader is born, the Galactic Empire is at peace. Humans and other sentient beings coexist in a secular society ruled by a republic system similar to ancient Rome, in which every world in the empire is represented by senators. Among these echelons of rulers exist quasi-religious groups and cults. Most influential during this time period are the Jedi Order. They study and develop a mystical, symbiotic relationship with the all-encompassing energy of the universe, which they call the Force. This energy has a polar nature with a light and a dark side. The Jedi affiliate with the light side, which flourishes with self-discipline, emotional mastery, martial artistry, and devotion to the service and protection of the weak and innocent. It is understood that the Force seeks balance, and so there is a faction of practitioners equal to the Jedi called the Sith. They use their discipline for personal gain. They encourage and harness emotions like rage, hatred, and fear in themselves and others. They seduce, backstab, deceive, manipulate, lie, murder, betray, and desecrate the Force by using it to achieve unnatural ends. Sith believe that any means is justified to harness ultimate power. At the time of this tale, no Sith have been detected for many years. but a few very powerful Sith are gaining strength to reemerge. The Senate grows suspicious of the Jedi Order because they take actions as an organization of authority without appropriate oversight. The Order is allowed to seek out Force-sensitive children in the galaxy and invite them to train as Jedi, rather than leave them vulnerable to the influence of the dark side. This story begins on a remote planet where a colony of all-female witches have been hiding from the Jedi. These witches are a Force cult who independently interact with the Thread, the word they use for the Force. This cult claims to be gray practitioners who use the power of the Thread as they see fit. The Jedi have classified them as skewing towards the dark side, but not so much as the Sith. Nevertheless, this cult must hide from the Jedi as their practices have created an abomination. The witches used a vergence in the Force to create and gestate one single human girl, which they were able to split into identical twins. By the way, I had to look up the word vergence. It means two things moving in tandem with each other like your eyeballs. This implies that the witches figured out how to manipulate both sides of the Force to cooperate and create a life form. This is eventually how Darth Vader, or Anakin Skywalker, is conceived, but the Force was not manipulated to do it. The Force created Anakin spontaneously. A group of Jedi arrive on the witches' planet and discover these twin children. The Jedi and witches are mutually suspicious. The Jedi invite the children to leave with them, and the witches try to convince their children to stay. It is clear one twin aligns with the light side and the other aligns with the dark side. The twins have an argument, and one threatens to kill her sister to prevent her from leaving. The dark twin starts a fire that destroys their fortress. The witches violate and possess the mind of one of the Jedi to provoke the Jedi to leave. The witches and Jedi somehow get into a conflict. The witch leaders continue to escalate their aggression, while the Jedi try to de-escalate. The mother creator of the twins dissolves into a dark cloud and begins to dissolve the light daughter as well. One of the Jedi Masters mistakes this for an act of aggression, so he thrusts his lightsaber into the dark cloud. Somehow this kills the mother of the twins. All the rest of the witches collectively possess the mind of the biggest Jedi and force the Jedi to fight his comrades. The senior-most Jedi enters the mind of her colleague and cuts off the witch's mind control. This kills the entire collective of witches. The dark twin is lost in the tumult. The light twin is taken by the Jedi. The Jedi group decide not to report the event to the Senate for fear it would bring undue scrutiny and oversight to the Jedi Order. 16 years later, the twins are in their early 20s. The light twin could not manage the grief she felt for the loss of her family, so she quit the Jedi Order. The dark twin found a Sith master to train her so that she may take revenge on the Jedi for killing her family. The dark twin is ordered by her master to kill all the Jedi without a weapon. Despite her status as a student, the dark twin kills one Jedi with a knife and convinces another one to drink poison. Meanwhile, the light twin is arrested by the Jedi for her sister's crimes. Somehow they decide to allow her to be free if she will help them find her sister. They eventually find the dark twin just in time for her to have a change of heart and give up the murdering. This displeases her Sith master, who reveals himself to be a strapping, attractive young man. He battles with the Jedis, killing all but the twins and the Jedi who killed their mother. The light twin is knocked unconscious. The dark twin disguises herself as her sister and leaves with the Jedi. The Sith master abducts the light twin to an unknown planet and seduces her to the dark side. She tries on his helmet, which causes her to have a vision of her sister killing the remaining Jedi. This moment of clairvoyance allows her to know where to find her sister. She and the Sith master find her and the remaining Jedi. The sisters argue again over the truth of what happened when their family was killed. They physically fight each other. The dark twin escapes while the other is distracted. The Sith master and the Jedi master have one last lightsaber fight. The Sith is defeated but not killed. The dark twin disarms the Jedi and breaks the crystal in his lightsaber. The light twin is overcome with grief and anger. while the Jedi explains that he intended to protect her from a dangerous mother. The light twin turns to the dark side, force choking the Jedi to death just as he was trying to express his love for her. She heals the crystal in his lightsaber with her blood, and she reignites the saber, turning it from blue to red. The Sith Master declares her transition complete. The dark twin no longer seeks revenge or tutelage, although she gives no reason why. The Sith wipes the memory of the twin who did not want to train, and takes his new acolyte with him back to his unknown planet, where a very powerful Sith Lord is waiting for them. The head of the Jedi Order finally reports to the Senate. In an effort to cover up the scandal, she lies and says the whole debacle was initiated by one flawed man who is now dead. The end.
I know what's going on.
Now, Headland's screenplay is such a mess, and she has such a diffuse mind that interpreting what she intended for this show is a lot, I imagine, like reading tarot. Thankfully, since I am woo-woo all the way and definitely a tarot reader and also a BA in BS, I think I'm uniquely qualified to give an interpretation of what's happening here. Okay, first of all, this isn't a totally bad premise, okay? She did have some good ideas, in my opinion. What failed was the execution. Notwithstanding that she totally retcons the entire existence arc of Darth Vader, and then also brings in some other problematic connections with Yoda and, I don't know, Darth Sidious. Like, why is everybody just lurking everywhere? Why can't... It is so useless for me to ask these questions. I'm just going to move on. So Leslie Headland is actually full of great ideas. I think she could have a decent career as a showrunner and a producer as long as she had excellent writers who actually gave a crap about interpreting what she's trying to do and translating that into something coherent for general audiences. So according to Wikipedia, Leslie Headland followed the same filmography that George Lucas drew from when he was creating the original Star Wars, specifically the work of Akira Kurosawa, who is a Japanese filmmaker who made a lot of samurai films and also made this really important film called Rashomon. So Headland wanted to create a Star Wars story that was based around the Sith as main characters. Totally cool idea. Plenty of people on board with that from the old and the new school. But she faced two major obstacles. One is that making a villain sympathetic story is old hat for Disney. They have been doing it for a whole decade, and I don't think the audience for Disney was ever on board with it to begin with. They were just giving Disney some latitude because of all the goodwill they had built up over the years. And the second major obstacle, frankly, is Headland's nihilistic worldview, which is fundamentally incompatible with the Star Wars franchise because Star Wars has always been focused on forgiveness and optimism and hope. I mean, the first episode is called A New Hope, for crying out loud. So if you're making an episode of Disney Star Wars that doesn't eventually end in that hope, it's gonna be a tough sell just on that basis alone. I think maybe Headland felt empowered after watching Rashomon, and that's because Rashomon is very nihilistic. It really draws into question the nature of humanity and whether or not we can trust in it. Kurosawa's film explores moral relativism, the disintegration of the society that these characters were living in, lack of faith in humanity, a lot of topics that are really prescient to our current day and age. And I think that it's fine to explore that, but when you go to a particular franchise to escape, it ends up causing problems where all you find in your escape material is just more of the same stuff that you've been seeing over and over again in the news.
I know what's going on.
My brother told me I need to give more examples, so this is me giving more examples. In Rashomon, it's made up mostly of flashbacks, but every time you do a flashback, you actually see something from a totally different point of view, and you get new information. That is something that the flashbacks in the Acolyte did not have. They didn't have new information. They were not really told from a different point of view. A couple of them were. I feel like throwing in all of those flashbacks was just padding on something that was already short, and I felt like it was cheap. It made it feel like it was cheating, and it really didn't help the story. Okay, this is a big one. There is no time and space to what Leslie Headland does. The travel across the galaxy from Coruscant, which is a central location, out to the edge of the galaxy is like instantaneous. It's kind of a point that some people might not care about, especially for more female viewers who are more interested in the relationships. They don't really care about the science. There's also no visual cues for where we are in time and space. Where are we in this long saga story? Touchstones of costume. I don't really hear anything in the dialogue. I mean, there's like one Coruscant opening animation, and that's it. You even really see it from different angles. It's like they are using the same footage each time, just CGI footage, one building, white buildings packed front to back, horizon to horizon, flying cars. That's it. That's it. And then you get this really claustrophobic shot. You don't get to see how big the rooms are. You don't get to see the hallways. You know, the original Star Wars used to include a lot of cuts of people talking on the ships, people having discussion on the ships while they were traveling, people talking about traveling, talking about how long it takes to travel places. For instance, in the first film, A New Hope, Obi-Wan had time to kind of train Luke a little and put the helmet on his head and tell him what his gear was about. They used it as a plot device that was multi-purpose. It helped you to understand it's going to take a minute to get from this location to that location, which anchors you in time and space. Leslie's stuff exists in a vacuum, in a universe where fire burns in the vacuum of space. So I think it's a little too far to be credible. Rashomon, on the other hand, is very specific about time and place. We know that we're traveling forward and backward in time because of the flashbacks, but we also see set pieces that reflect the whole theme of the film. So, for instance, the main narrators and where the movie starts is with this huge structure that looks like it's been blown up by a bomb. It looks like it's post-Nagasaki kind of a deal, and it is torrential rain. And so it looks like the rain itself exploded the building, and it's eroding the building as they're sitting underneath this broken structure, this huge broken structure. It's gorgeous, and it really informs the viewer as to how horrible things are in the universe of this film. Not only that, but the characters, the dialogue, the screenplay itself refers to time and place. They talk about how Rashomon, which is the name of the city or the province that they live in, is a terrible place, and nothing's been good for a while, and everyone's poor, and violence is everywhere, and they refer to what it's like to live in the culture. So we are anchored in culture, we're anchored in time, and we're anchored in space. And Headland's stuff is not. Okay, so the fight scenes feel like there's really nothing at stake. A lot of the early ones feel slow and lethargic. A lot of people liked the lightsaber fight in the forest. I think also the people who were watching the show, they were just happy to see a fight at all. They want to see, they want to see lightsaber go, they want to see, pew pew, go pew pew. But another huge issue with the fight scenes is the fact that the power of people is not consistent. So who's stronger than who? Who can do what? Who's stronger than who? What are we actually up against? I was especially disappointed by the fight with, I just always call her Trinity, Carrie-Anne Moss. Everybody was so excited to see Carrie-Anne Moss. I know a lot of people tuned in specifically for Carrie-Anne Moss. I am one of those people. Funk killed immediately in the first scene. I'm like, no stakes, strange powers. Nobody knows who's stronger than who. The randomest of Padawans can suddenly almost defeat the big baddie. It makes no sense, and it takes you out of the show. It's a fail. It is another fail. Rashomon was really interesting in terms of battle scenes because there were definitely some sword fighting scenes and there was, some beating up and some violence, and it changed with every scene. One of the characters, one of the bad guys, he is a professional thief and he's a well-known rapist. And so his version of the tale, when he tells it, he's very gallant and he's very good with his sword, and it actually paints the husband of the victim in a very heroic way too. It was an honorable sword fight. They were both really good at sword fighting and they were both attacking each other with honor. In another flashback, it shows the both of them are scared and neither of them wants to engage in this fight. So totally different information, totally different fighting scenes. And there's just this beautiful texture in the fighting scenes in this film. And there's none of that in The Acolyte, obviously. Okay, so this point is an interesting one, which I don't think a lot of people have covered. It's the gray sense of good and evil. So there's a time and place for that, and it could be in a show like this, that's fine. The only issue is that if you don't establish what's generally understood within your universe to be good and bad, then that makes all the good people not really that good and all the bad people not really that bad. I think that what you were going for, Leslie, was gray values, that no one is good or bad. We all know that you were going for, let's look at the Jedi in a new way and maybe let's see how the Jedi could be the bad guy. Great. The problem is that's less effective when, for your show specifically, you are setting up everybody and everything to be morally gray. If everybody and everything is morally equal, then you're not even establishing the concept of the Jedi being good to begin with. And so you can't really call them bad when you get around to blaming them for all of the troubles of the main characters. Does that make sense? Like, what you're relying on is the definition of the Jedi being good in a previous iteration of this show, instead of establishing within the universe of your show the fact that people generally view the Jedi as being good, but they're bad. So because you did not establish the Jedi as being good in this show, when you went to call them bad at the end of the show, that point fell flat because the viewer has gone on this journey with you where everyone is morally gray. And so because there is no good or bad, they have to judge the individual characters on the way they reacted to what happened to them. I don't know about other viewers, but by the end, I was at a place where, well, the Jedi just did what they thought was right. And if they did what they thought was right, then that doesn't make them bad. And the bad people are mercilessly murdering people, and that action itself is bad. Because don't murder people, Leslie. So now that we're just judging everybody on their actions and not on the understanding of how society views them, the murderers are still bad. And the people who are protecting others are still good. It never landed, Leslie. It never landed. It is because you did not set up that stark contrast between good and evil. Because you left it morally gray, your own plan to make it look like the Jedi are bad fell flat. It did not deliver in the story. This show is void of humor, personality, curiosity, and hope. All the characters are insufferable and selfish. Their choices make no sense. They don't even really seem like real people. And to be frank, it's not just Amandla Stenberg that had problems with zero facial expression. I feel like if you go back and you watch, really pretty much all of the cast is just dead behind the eyes. No facial expressions, really. No well wishes. The camaraderie amongst the Jedi is really strained. Everybody seems like they're constantly eyeing everybody else to see. I mean, everybody just seems really mistrustful, nihilistic, pessimistic, depressed, expressionless, and soulless. I think maybe the one actor who tried to pull it up from there was Lee Jong-jae, who I thought was quite good, but suffered immensely from the language barrier. They really did him no favors by trying to give him words that just sounded poor in his accent. I think that's something that they could have worked around to make him look better, and I feel like they made him look worse, and I feel like that was a disservice to that actor. I thought they did his character dirty. I didn't like it. There's no sweet, fun banter back and forth like we had in the original trilogy. You know, like fun little comments even within battle scenes, you know, that just this fun banter like between Han Solo and Chewbacca. There was a couple of jabs, but they were like mean jabs. And the characters are so shallow. And I actually could have done with some more archetypal characters. I would have settled for stereotypes at this point, because at least a stereotype would have conveyed some sort of personality. Everyone is just milquetoast, period. It's like, I am a Jedi costume, I have pointy stick. I have Jedi costume, sometimes show male nipples. Like, just no personality. I don't like how the men dissolve into a puddle progressively over the show. Like, they'll start off on par with the women, and then like the women turn into worse jerks, and then the men just devolve into a puddle of yesteryear. Like it's a delightless experience. It's like licking a piece of chalk. There's a lot of character discussion rather than action. So a lot of standing in hallways, a lot of standing in conference rooms, a lot of discussing around campfires, a lot of talking in the woods while gathering moss. There's also talking in courtyards and standing in rooms and reprogramming droids and flipping buttons and, you know, slamming your fist on the console and all of the cool stuff. Like, they mention plenty of cool stuff. They'll even have like sounds for cool stuff that happens, and it all happens off screen. I hate to say it, this is something that a lot of female writers do have a tendency to do. They would rather have two characters discussing something that happened rather than to actually see the thing happening. Because we enjoy watching people talk to each other rather than watching people engaged in a conflict. It's just the way women happen to be. There's no shade, but I think that that's something that you need to get over, especially when you're working on a franchise that is mostly action-based. But again, that's not for us. I will get to that in a minute. And look, I hate to be so blunt about this, but the dialogue was just really, really poor. It sounded like a combo of Leslie Headland's jumbled head thoughts, you know, the word salad that's happening up here, a 13-year-old trying their best to mimic adults talking like they do in Law and Order approximately. Dialogue is one of my favorite aspects of character. Not surprising, it just really disappointed with this show. The dialogue in Rashomon will change almost drastically from scene to scene. So, for instance, the baddie, the thief, when he's speaking to the magistrate, and he is just insane. He speaks like he's manic. So in the next scene where we see his perspective, where he goes through the woods and he does his deeds, he actually sounds a lot more reasonable, and he's not so disjointed and insane. And then at the very end, when a third party is talking about his view of how the thief behaved, the thief was behaving in a very calm, stoic way, and all of his words were actually pretty intelligent, and he comported himself with a certain amount of like honor and grace. Superb use of dialogue. It was mature, it served the character, it moved the story forward. I couldn't say anything better. Headland wasn't picking up on any of that for this show. You know, one of my pet topics that I love to explore, and you're probably going to see some more videos on my channel exploring this topic, the masculine and the feminine being expressed through film and story. Leslie Headland, she made a big deal about this. She was talking about how they specifically made the masculine characters more feminine and the feminine characters more masculine. The only trouble is the men are performatively strong, but underneath they're emasculated and subservient, and it makes them less attractive. Again, I don't know what fan base of woman is supposed to find a man attractive who kills her friends, abducts her, and then submits to her will. The way Keimer, for instance, just absolutely becomes putty in the hands of this woman that he wants to train. Who's the acolyte then? Is she gonna teach him? By the end of the show, Soul had like dissolved into this tearful, childless woman who was being choked to death by the object of her affection. It was so weird. I don't see how that's a gotcha. Okay, the women, likewise, on the outside are kind of performatively strong, right? But on the inside, they are unintelligent, insufferable, irrational, and entitled. They're horrible women. They're not good women. And I mean, yay for androgyny, I guess. Yay for pants. Yay for mullets. Yay. Who cares? There's no spark. The sexiness comes from the polarity. This is very men's and women's group, but I love it. It comes from one person taking on the masculine and the other person taking on the feminine. It doesn't matter about the sexuality. It matters about the energetic polarity that's happening there. So the reason that Keimer was sexy for 5 minutes is because he was the one in charge. Over the course of the scene and the following episode, he loses battles. He is bested by this woman. And so by the end of the final episode where he's, they're standing by the seashore and he's holding her hand, I felt like this man is her bitch now. I don't know how that's sexy. There's a cup of tea for everybody, and this is not my cup of tea.
I know what's going on.
I could go on forever and ever. And, maybe that's what this channel is for. I don't know. I'm still finding that out. I could make a full-length documentary about how bad this show is and why and all the reasons and how to fix it. And I have really thought about doing that with this video. But I've decided I'm not going to do it. And the reason is because it would be a colossal waste of my time and frankly a waste of your time too. Because especially the response that Leslie Headland has given to the last episode and to people's reaction to this entire series, she has made it, and Kathleen Kennedy have made it so crystal clear. We do not want to make shows for you anymore. Stop watching our channel. So why should I give creative notes? Why should I put that out in the universe unless it's maybe going to help somebody who watches my channel who's making something better, somebody who wants to engage in craftsmanship, somebody who wants to bring hope to a world that is already swirling the toilet. For crying out loud, Leslie. Okay. Little thing about wars and a little thing about movies. So there was this little thing that we like to call World War II. And when that was happening, nobody wanted to think about the fact that they were going and coming from war. No one wanted to think about the fact that they were losing all of their sons and their brothers and their boyfriends and their husbands. So you know what movie Hollywood gave them? Hollywood gave them The Wizard of Oz. That was one of the most popular movies, and the theme song, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, was a really popular song at the time because it was about going home. The whole point of MGM's version of The Wizard of Oz was going off to this crazy land where all of this violence happens to you and you're just trying to make it back home, and then eventually you do. Catchphrase from The Wizard of Oz was, "There's no place like home." They needed an escape. They needed to forget about the wide world. They needed to have a break. They needed a psychological break. They needed to go on a different journey. They needed to be encouraged. They need to be shown that the power was inside of them all the time. We need to have these things. When you're discussing nihilism and how everyone is bad and how everything is relative and nothing really matters, there's no break. And Hollywood, in my opinion, if you're going to engage in that, you are not doing your job. I'm sad. This hurts because Disney Lucasfilm has replaced craftsmanship and hope with cheap ideology and spite. I mean, I feel like this isn't even a show. I feel like it's a middle finger. There is one and only one good thing that has come out of this whole debacle, and that is the unity that I have seen amongst people from all different backgrounds, and like in my comment section and across the internet, we have all united in saying that this This crap show, and really this trend of releasing these crap shows, it doesn't represent us. It doesn't represent what we want. And we're all unified in that. I mean, it's kind of a Watchmen type outcome, but still here we are, all unified. White, straight men, people of color, women, queers, like we're all saying, stop making this. We don't want it. And what's really frustrating is the response consistently from the head of Lucasfilm and also from its directors and creators and creative directors. They are all unified in saying, we do not want to make things for you anymore. We're moving on. Leslie has fed us her clever nihilism and thinly veiled bigotry, and we have responded with camaraderie and tolerance and respectful dialogue. And I'm just kind of proud of us. Because we could have let this erupt into yet another battle in this huge war that's going on across the world where everyone's losing their minds. But we haven't lost our minds, and we haven't lost our hearts, and we haven't lost what we love. And it's so nice to find people who differ on so many things agree on at least one thing. It's like a small little slice of peace on earth. It's like an amuse-bouche of peace on earth. I don't even know what amuse-bouche is. Did I spell that right? Look, I feel like I've made 1,000 friends, and I just want to let you know, just in case the right person hasn't told you, you are not a bigot just because you hate a TV show. No one can ruin the beautiful memories of your childhood. Listening to people can close the chasm of misunderstanding, and establishing peace starts with finding the good in each other. That's what Star Wars taught me. And it was taught to me by a white straight male who did kiss his sister. Thanks for being my friend on this journey. May the Force be with you, and I hope to see you next time. It's getting hot in here for filming purposes. I'm so wise. I'm wise and I'm hot.